Hey guys, this is Andrew with SHTF Honey Badger, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my pantries for my prepping. So with me, I use a two-part system for prepping. So I have a working pantry, which is what I'm currently standing in front of here, and this is where I kind of have my immediate access stuff that I have that I would use on a relatively normal basis. And then I have a long-term storage pantry. We're going to be touching on both of those today, and I'm going to be going over a little bit on how I have my system set up. So with this first one here, this is my working pantry. With the working pantry, this is going to be any items that I use on a relatively normal basis. So in here, I have different things like muffin mixes, I have some spices, different things like potato flakes, crackers, Gatorade mix, for example. And then I have those type of items here. Then moving downward, I do keep a good amount of my canned soups and stuff up here. So anything that I want immediate access to, so canned chilies, canned soups like chicken noodle soup, things like that, I keep some right here. So that's kind of my entry-level amount that I can go and use on a normal basis. Moving down, then I have a shelf that I have dedicated fully to canned meats. So it'd be like beef, chicken, you can get even like pulled pork in the can now, corned beef, things of that nature. I have all that down here on a shelf. And then moving further down, I kind of have these bottom two that can't really see on camera as miscellaneous. And those are going to be more items like I keep, for example, kind of like homemade, I wouldn't know if I'd use the word MRE, but essentially kind of a grab and go type meal. So I have a good amount in here, like some different things like some trail mix packets, beef jerky, some different packaged meats, things like that. Essentially kind of stuff you'd want to keep you going. It's not a full meal, but it's definitely enough if you have to move on the fly and you need something to throw in a pack real quick or grab. Just grab one of these Ziplocs right here filled with these and I can hang it out with me. And then this bottom shelf, I just have some random canned goods. So like, some pork and beans, things like that. Just stuff that I want more immediate access to. And then with this pantry, anytime I'm running out of items I have stored here, I'm going to go over to my prepping pantry that I have for more long-term storage goods, and that's where I'll grab out of. So give a second, guys. We'll be right over there, and I'm going to walk you through what I have in my long-term storage pantry that I basically use as my store when I'm running out of stuff in here. Alright guys, so I'm over here now in my room where I have my long-term storage pantry, and this is kind of where I'm going to grab anything that I need that I need to restock that other pantry, or items that aren't really commonly used I can grab out of here. So starting off, I do have a closet that's full of stuff, and that's what we'll be getting into. But this first thing I'm going to go over real quick is I do have a shelving unit out here as well. So on here I do have a couple containers of the freeze-dried food. This is from Wise Company. It's the same company that makes the Ready Wise product. It's tolerable, but if you've seen my review video going over the different comparisons between them, it's definitely not a great pick if you have an option. I do have a couple cases of protein shakes and stuff over here that I use on a regular basis, and then I do have 4 containers of coffee. This is something I definitely stock up on. You don't want to run out of coffee when something happens. It's a great thing to have as a morale booster. It's also a great thing to trade if you need to trade it ever when something happens. And then I do have a couple things of toilet paper here on this top of the shelf. Keep in mind as well, what exactly you're stocking is going to vary a little bit based off you and your needs. Personally, I am a single guy, so I'm planning primarily on stuff that's going to be beneficial to me to have stored at my particular house at least. Now, moving over, we're going to get over here to the actual pantry. And I'm going to go kind of from the top, or from the bottom up. So first thing real quick I do have out here is I do have a bucket with one of these Gamma Seal lids. It's currently holding dried rice. I am not a big fan of this, so these Gamma lids don't work very well. They're not airtight like they're advertised. I have personally done everything I can to make sure the seal is good, that it's going as tight as it can, but from my experience, these still do let moisture in and out. So if you're, wanting to avoid contaminated food, I would highly recommend you avoid the Gamma Seal lids just because they are not airtight. So if you have food that you're going to be regularly using but you want it sealed up, don't go with the Gamma lids. Go with something different, and I'll actually touch on a second here what I would recommend. So now that I kind of touched on that, got that out of the way, we're moving over here to the actual food stores. So the first thing you notice down here is I have a couple mason jars, about 24 of them sitting here right now, and these have rice and then black and pinto beans in it. So it's spread between them. These are actually sealed in a vacuum sealed jar. So there's an attachment you can get, and if this is something you guys have enough interest, let me know in the comments below and I can do a whole video on it. And it is an attachment that will actually suck the air out, so it's essentially vacuum sealing the jar. So your dried goods in those jars are in a no oxygen environment. And from what I've seen, they work really well on keeping the food good long term. I know a lot of other people use them. Personally, I'm actually a bigger fan of those over something like this bucket, or even over using Mylar, just for the fact that those are metal lids with metal rings in a glass jar. You're not going to have bugs or rodents or anything get through that like they would be able to get through a plastic bucket or a Mylar bag. So personally, that's why I'm a fan of them. That's something I'm just going to keep expanding and getting more of those jars and sealing them that way. Another thing I want to point out with those jars as well is they're broken up into smaller units. So if you need those, you can grab, I believe those are about 1.5 pounds from what I recall, of rice, and you have that you can use and open up. So you're not opening a full 25-pound bag if you need rice, for example, or a 20 or 30-pound bag of beans. You just open up your jar that has 1.5 pounds in it and use it, or if you need to trade it or give it to somebody, you're giving away a lot less at that point. Now those jars are a little bit more expensive than the Mylar, but it's a great option to have for your food stores, and I would highly recommend it. Next to that, I do have some Campbell's soup. I just have that sitting there. Stuff like that, I usually keep an eye out at Costco. From my personal experience, Costco's a little pricey on canned goods for their normal prices, but when they do have sales coming around, they are a bargain. I want to say I paid like $6 for 8 cans, which from what I've seen is a ridiculously good price. Going to the store for similar Campbell's soups, maybe under a different brand, like sub-brand, but still Campbell's, still the same soup, you're paying almost $2 a can anymore. So keep an eye out for sales like that. Moving upward, this whole shelf right here is basically dedicated to vegetables. So, I do have some different items further down. So you'll see, for example, down here, I have sweet peas, I have corn, I have some yams, and then green beans, and then on the end here I do have some pork and beans, and then some little bit of miscellaneous items on top. So I have a couple containers of salt that I just haven't found another place to store yet, and then I do have some additional potato flakes right here. And these are always good to keep as well, to keep in mind. These are cheap. These are, like 4 servings per container. It's about 500 calories. And it's always a good item just to mix in the variety, because you don't want to just be eating rice and beans alone when something happens. And moving up a little more, this next shelf here, I primarily have beans over on the left side, and I have all my canned meats that's stored back here. So anything that hasn't made it out into that primary pantry, which is my stuff with the furthest out expiration dates, for example, are going to be back here. So the canned chicken's great. These are one of the cheapest canned meats right now that you can get, from my experience. Looking around, tuna, for example, has even gone up pricey, and tuna, from what I saw, used to kind of be the cheapest one you can get. But as of this point, the ground chuck, like a chicken breast here from Great Value, is kind of your cheapest option out there. And, quality and taste-wise, it's relatively comparable with any other brand. So I wouldn't be too worried about, making sure you're buying the name brand. If you're going to buy, for example, the store brand, try it first. But overall, it's going to typically be a very similar quality. Over here I have, for example, too, like some Vienna sausages and stuff. Again, they may not be the tastiest thing, but at the same time, they're good to mix in with stuff. So you can mix those in with some beans, for example, add yourself a little bit different texture or flavor. And then moving forward, I have the tuna. I know this one depends on the person, but like the tuna, I can just eat that out of the can personally. It's a great source of protein. And if you're surviving, or you're dealing with an emergency and you don't know how long it'll be till stuff resumes kind of back to a normal basis, you want to make sure you have some sources of protein, because outside of the beans, the meats are great for that, and you're going to get sick of beans if that's your only source of protein. Moving up, this is my next shelf here, and this is where I have some different pasta sauces and stuff. This is something that personally I store quite a bit of, just for the fact that it's relatively easy to kind of mix into some variety. It helps give you some different flavors. The Alfredo is also a good source of calories. So, you can heat up some noodles in different pastas, which a little further up, this is where I kind of have some different pastas stored. I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me that lists it all, but I believe right there I probably have about 30 pounds of dried pasta, because there is more sitting behind what you can see right there as well. But you can hook up some pasta, cook it up, throw in, for example, some canned chicken, and then throw in one of these sauces, and that'll feed several people. So it's a relatively cheap meal, but it's a great meal to throw aside, and you can prep. And again, here's 7 different tastes and sauces is going to add in some variety, and it'll help you out on not getting food fatigued. Got to have your peanut butter, so I have that up here as well. I'm a little bit low on that right now. I need to pick up a couple cases. I know with the peanut butter shortage we've actually had for the last couple months, that's kind of ever happened since they had that major recall on the Jif peanut butter products. It's been a little hard to find actual normal peanut butter. So I'm getting a little low on that, and that's something I'll be adding in here shortly. And then I touched on those noodles up there. I do have some pancake mix and stuff as well. Things like pancake mixes are great just because all they need is water. So you throw that together, throw it on a griddle, and you can put that over a little camp stove. You can put that on an electric griddle if you still have power. Things like that. Cook them up. Good source right there for food. Down here I do have some muffins and stuff as well. I am changing up what I'm storing. The Jiffy brand's good. It tastes good, but it does need eggs and milk. So I'm switching over to getting more mixes that are just primarily going to need water to mix them up. That way it's less ingredients you need. And you can always cook this stuff up as well in Dutch ovens. So if you don't have access to some sort of fire burning oven, or a camping oven, if you can find those out there, or you don't have power to cook in your normal oven, you can cook these up in a Dutch oven over a fire with those types of mixes. And then moving over to the other side here real quick. On the other side, stored up top, I do have some more noodles. So, I have several packs of ramen up here. Ramen's cheap, it's easy to store, it's a good source of calories. So one thing I'd always recommend storing, and kids will eat it. So no matter how picky they are, kids will eat the ramen. Next to that, I do have some crackers. So this isn't something I see people store a lot of, but crackers, I do have a pretty good expiration date out there. So I typically store those, and they're great to use with peanut butter and stuff, because, you can store as much peanut butter as you want, but it's going to be nice not to be eating it with a spoon when you have to eat it, if it comes to that. So things like crackers are good because they'll still store a while, and then you can use them with stuff like peanut butter, throw them in with soups and other meals, and just kind of break up the texture, and again, help fight that food fatigue that can set in, because you don't want to be eating too much of that same stuff. Moving down on this next shelf, this is the same shelf just to the left of where I have the pasta sauces. I have some other types of more soups here. So I do have some of the macaroni and beef. This is like a rip-off of Chef Boyardee type stuff, to be honest with you, but it's a good amount of servings. It's stuff you can eat cold, and it's relatively filling for what it is. So, I grabbed those. I want to say those are on like 60 something cents a can. So it's a really good, cheap way to stock up on stuff like that. Same thing over here with the chili. I know on their own, they are very pricey at the stores anymore, but this was another Costco find. You can buy these 8 cans of chili for, I think, $12 right now, which is pretty cheap for chili. They last a while, and they're a good source of calories and protein, so I would never underestimate that. And remember, too, another item that, if you have to, you can eat cold. So that's another reason I stockpile that. Then down below, like I was talking about, we have our beans. I just have a variety here, and these are something you can throw them together to mix a stew. Their stuff, too, you can just heat them up and use them over rice and just have rice and beans. So, great option there. Again, I have my canned vegetables down here that we kind of touched on a little bit earlier. And one thing that I don't want you to forget is dog food. So if you have pets, make sure you have dog food, and make sure you have a reasonable supply of dog food as well. So with the amount that I have down here, this is roughly about 4 months of dog food. I need to pick up a little bit more for dog food, because I want to get the dog food out to at least a minimum the same calorie-wise as what I have. So I would just make sure you don't skip on these, and that you're keeping them stored as well in a good space. But dog food's a big one if you have pets, or vice versa if you have cats. You need to think about that with cat food. But going over this here, that is currently kind of how I have my pantry set up. I know one thing that I didn't really point out earlier, but I'm going to touch on real quick as well, is make sure when you're putting stuff in your pantries, you are dating it. So, for example, I always try to date right here on the boxes when I buy these in the packs, because it's the best way to do it. Just buy the boxes. They're easier to move and store. But I always put the date on the front of the box because the printed dates sometimes are hard to read or hard to find. And then I put them on top of the cans too. So that way, even if these get dropped or spread out, I can still find the dates on these easily. They wipe off a lot. They're a lot less likely to wipe off as well with the marker versus just the printed dates. My experience is the printed dates tend to just wipe off too easy, or they're hard to find, or they fade. So I always just write them on the box. I write them on the can. It takes a little bit of extra time when you store it, but it is well worth it in the long run because it's really easy for me to visually look at this and say, okay, I know this is the most recently stored, or this is the closest to expiration, and I know what to grab. And then with these cardboard boxes as well, just throw a piece of masking tape on them, put a new date if you switch out what's in there, and you are good to go. So this is my prepping pantry. You know, I know something that's definitely still a work in progress for me. On a personal level, I have about 8 months worth of food stored that I could actually survive off of. But, you know, again, that's going to vary based off how much you're needing for calories and stuff. But my calculations at about 2,000 calories a day, it'd be about 8 months worth for what I actually have here. And keep that in mind as well. Again, this is me as a single individual. If you're prepping for a family, you know, you're prepping for several people, you're going to need a lot more room than this. But regardless, this is still a great start. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any feedback or you have questions, drop them down in the comments. We are always more than happy to chat with you or answer questions or, you know, take any input you have. Most of all, though, stay safe and stay prepared.